In context to the transformational change necessary in the global pharma crisis situation, it is vital to address one critical and central topic, which is the death of the global pharma industry as we know it. Most of the top global pharma companies, the top 10, 15 global pharma companies today, are undergoing a slow process of death. They are their R&D and connected systems are rotten, they are bloated up, they are over fattened and over pampered, and there is no way left to sustain this hyperinflated state. And so it is a part of a integral life cycle process that these companies and the entire global pharma industry as we know it is undergoing a process of death, disintegration. It will cease to exist as we have known it for the last century or so in the near future. Do I say this out of any feeling of malice or hatred or hidden anger towards the global pharma industry? No, I don't have any bitterness in me about the global pharma industry. In fact, a large part of my life, professional life, I have dedicated to different sectors and different aspects of the global pharmaceutical industry, both in the emerging and developed markets. And due to that, one, I have personal insights and a good holistic overview of different aspects of the global pharma industry. And two, I have a deep concern for the present and also for the future of the global pharma industry. I know that my voice as an individual is small, but I believe it is not inconsequential. In a way, my voice represents the voice of thousands of employees, stakeholders connected to the global pharma industry who are concerned about the present and about the future and would like their voice to be heard. Yes, I have dedicated, and a lot of my past is connected with different sectors of the global pharma industry. Today, though, I find myself in a separate space which does involve partly the global pharma industry, but to a great extent, my life purpose takes me on a path which is a bit broader and wider than the scope of the global pharma industry. So, from a personal or professional point of view, I don't feel connected to that extent to the global pharma industry as I used to in the past. I feel satisfied and successful in the path that I am progressing on. At the same time, as an entity that I have been intimately connected with, I do feel concern. And I also feel that there is some significant value contribution that I have to give from my point of view. On the one hand, the global pharma industry has contributed a very elite and significant value for the betterment of the human race, the health of the global human community over the past century. And yet, just like every natural process, there are some faults that are integral in that process, which lead to the downfall of that process. And that downfall is essential for re-emergence of a new growth. And it is this downfall, complete disintegration, that the global pharma industry is going through today. And mostly because of the anxiety complex and an extension of the mental habit of wanting to continue in the same mode as in the past. There is a big resistance to the acceptance of this fact that the top global pharma companies and the global pharma industry, as we know it, is on a slow, steady but sure process of death and disintegration and end. And it is this lack of acceptance that makes the process more difficult, more opaque, and causes lots of internal struggles and strifes that affect the current employees and the stakeholders connected with the global pharma industry today. The signs of this disintegration and death are obvious. There are internal signs and external signs. Internally, the companies are the top higher management of these companies are aware for quite some time now that they are going through this process of complete disintegration, and to that extent they have been implying internally also within these companies that the policy decisions and the higher level strategy messages that are being communicated to the global employees are in the nature that indicate that this structure of these companies is collapsing and is going to end. And in a way, the higher managements are trying to mentally prepare their employee base, their stakeholder base for this coming process of disintegration. There are also external signs that we are aware of for several years now. The global consumer base for the pharmaceutical industry has lost the trust, the faith, as compared to few decades back, the way medicines and pharmaceutical products used to be looked upon. Today there is, because of good reason, a huge amount of skepticism and anxiety connected with new medicines that are launched in the global market. And many a times we see that big blockbuster molecules that initially are projected as the lifesavers of the future by the global pharma industry later on have to be withdrawn because of some regulatory complications, some side effects that were suppressed by the global pharma industry. In the meantime, causing huge amount of grief and pain to the global patient population that has already been subscribing to those medicines. There is definitely a very elite and supreme value of health and of global well-being that is at the center of the global pharma industry. This value was at the heart of medicine and of global pharma many decades back when core scientific research R&D was at the heart of the industry of the business. But gradually, as with everything in life, the business, the financial, the industry part of the global pharma has picked up and has submerged this value of global health and well-being deep. In today's global pharma companies, all that you see is ego trips about pushing your power positions higher and higher and wanting to reach positions from where more and more money and business can be made. The heart and the soul of the global pharma business is lost, and the higher management is very well aware of this, that the global pharma industry is totally off track now, and there are internal as well as external signs and pressures that are building day by day, whereby it is evident to the higher management of all the top global pharma companies that this is a sinking ship, it is a burning platform where the entire structure of the global pharma companies as they have existed till now is not just is going to, but as we speak, it is ceasing to exist. It is disintegrating, breaking down. The thing is that most of the higher management of these global pharma companies, the top global pharma companies which lobby and create the entire impression, the business impression for all the global pharma industry, they have been on a money trip, a power trip, a ego trip for so many decades now because of the success of the financial success and power success of the pharmaceutical blockbuster molecules for so far, that it is very difficult for them to get off this train. It is impossible for them to get off this power train. And though it is evident that the train is on a course towards a crash, an inevitable crash, the tendencies, the inherent tendencies, the bias, the bootstrap paradox is about trying to extend this power trip. And this is in a way making all the stakeholders connected with the global pharma industry, it is making them pay a very heavy price as this power trip continues. There are also several other aspects connected to regulatory vigilance, connected to the new molecules that are being promised by the pharmaceutical industry in the present and in the coming future. There is very high levels of regulatory vigilance being ordered around the global pharma R&D setup, and for rightful reasons, because the pharma industry as well as the global intellectual committee, the political community, the regulatory community, all of them are aware that the pipelines of the global pharma R&D are shrinking, and it is getting increasingly difficult to produce molecules. So there are going to be obviously lots of compromises made within the global pharma R&D departments, because they are under a heavy pressure to produce successful molecules. That is the focus on which the entire success of the entire global pharma companies depends on. And since they are on a high level of stress and pressure to deliver, it is obvious that some weak members in the R&D teams will commit some compromises in the marketing teams, in the sales teams, and will at least try to push the buck away from themselves, try to produce some successful molecules, and once they are in the market, it is some other teams that have to deal with all the complications. And the regulatory bodies and the global intellectual political communities are very well aware of this. So the regulatory and the regulations and the patient and physician awareness levels are very high now, and the molecules, before they are declared successful, have to undergo very high levels of scrutiny. And because of all of this, the pharmaceutical industry has to invest more and more time, energy, resources, and as a result, the molecules that come out are fewer and fewer, and the few ones are made even more expensive by the pharmaceutical industry. And of course, the money is expected from the global population, the taxpayer money, the patient population. And all of this heightened level of stress from all sides is in a way internally breaking the fabric, the structure, the purpose of the top global pharma companies. And it is creating a lot of bitterness and angst and fear and even hatred about all other external stakeholders within the global pharma companies. All of these are signs of a natural process of devolution in the top global pharma companies. It is just that nobody wants to speak about it, and it's a question of who will bell the cat. Me, and I'm sure there are quite a few other such voices who find themselves separate from the agendas of the global pharma industry today and are being vocal and verbal about cautioning this course, that a fatal course that the global pharma industry is taking today. And most of these voices are voices of concern for the core value of the global pharma industry that it represents, that it stands for, because that value will continue. And through this process of disintegration, it is important that this focus is maintained so that a new picture of the global pharma industry, a new face emerges in the future. At the same time, the values connected with the global employee, global stakeholder population, and the global patient and physician population connected with this core value of the global pharma industry. Interests of all of these communities are also important to be maintained. From that point of view, our online consultancy platform has developed, discussed, designed two models, the EMDM model, emerging market versus developed market model, as well as the Natraj model. And there are of course several other such voices who are trying to develop transformational change approaches and models to promote solutions for this crisis situation, which are in a frame of reference that is separate, that is beyond the entire crisis situation. The most vital aspect with this crisis situation is that the frame of reference of looking at this process of disintegration needs to be beyond the scope of the entire global pharma R&D setup, mindset and crisis situation. Once the frame of reference is beyond it, it will be possible to find solutions, creative approaches that will lift the industry focus beyond this crisis situation onto a different fresh start for the future. I am very clear about the process of disintegration and death that the global pharma industry is going through today, and I am equally optimistic, clear, hopeful and positive about the future beyond this crisis situation, beyond this process of transformation. It is important that the process of death and disintegration in the top global pharma companies is accepted at its face value and not resisted, not fought with. And while going through this process of disintegration, try to establish frames of reference that offer transformational and creative solutions, and that will lead to the positive, optimistic phase of the global pharma industry of tomorrow.